Hello and welcome to this week's book report. Today's book report and best ideas worth sharing comes from The Happiness Advantage by Shawn Achor. Now, Shawn's written down the 7 principles for positive psychology that fuel success and performance at work. Now, I really enjoyed this book, and even more so I enjoyed Shawn's TED Talk, which I'll put the link in for at the bottom of this video right here, where Shawn gave a talk on the happiness advantage in a 20-minute TED Talk, and it's absolutely fantastic. At the end of that, Shawn gives some next steps, 5 next steps for creating more happiness in your life. And what I really enjoyed most about this book is that Shawn took a really deep dive into each of the 7 principles that I'm going to share with you in a few minutes. And by going deeper into these principles, he gives analogies that help you to understand how we can find more happiness in our lives and what the science is that backs up the reasoning that he uses. So to jump into it really quickly, the 7 ideas worth sharing from this book are: number 1, happiness gives your brain and your organization a competitive advantage. And I think it's clear across every business metric, if you are happier at work, you tend to do more productive and worthwhile work. So the ultimate goal of being happy and having happy employer or happy employees obviously is an advantageous competitive advantage for every company. So the book starts off with a great premise that we should all try to aspire to have happier employees at work. Point number 2, he goes into you change your happiness by changing your mindset. And so many of us are fixed in a fixed mindset where we believe and we think things are going to happen for a certain reason because we create these sort of repetitive patterns. And we create these repetitive patterns, we get stuck. We stop seeing the potential that's all around us. Shawn goes on to talk about a really interesting study that they did where they were asking the experiment volunteers to just count the number of passes a basketball team made as they kind of went around a circle and passed the ball to each other. And people were so fixated on the task of counting those basketball passes that they totally missed the person walking behind the basketball players wearing a gorilla suit. And afterwards, when they asked, did you see the person in the gorilla suit? They all went like, what gorilla suit? And they just were so fixated on the task that they didn't see what was in the background. So I think what Shawn's trying to get at is that we get so fixated in our behaviors and our thinking patterns that we tend to forget or tend to have the inability to see other opportunities and other things beyond what we're actually looking for. And sometimes we're looking for the negative more than we're looking for the positive. So training your brain to capitalize on possibility. Now this is tip number 3, and this is really seeking the opportunities around you. When you start to see your world differently, new opportunities open up to you. It's a matter of sort of going from the I can't philosophy to the how can I philosophy. As soon as you start saying, if you say, I can't do something, I mean, for me, when I was trained to be an Ironman and I went to do my second Ironman, I didn't want to do any additional training volume-wise. I didn't want to give up any more hours, but I had to be smarter about what I did to reduce my time in the race. So I didn't say, I can't do this because I have no more time. I said, how can I do this within the time frame that I have? And as soon as you ask that question, your mind starts to see possibility differently. So the idea of training your brain to see new opportunities is one that you can train your brain to do, as opposed to just being in this sort of fixed mindset. It's that growth mindset of possibility that Shawn refers to. Now, Shawn's 4th point is capitalizing on the downs to build upward momentum. And I think if you look at folks like Michael Jordan, who got cut from his high school basketball team, if you look at Walt Disney, who got fired from a newspaper for being not creative enough, if you look at Thomas Edison, who took 1,000 attempts to create the first light bulb, all of these individuals who were highly successful had miserable failures, and they learned from those failures. They didn't just sort of put their tail between their legs and say, I'm no good, I can't do this. They said, how can I be better? And I love that philosophy, is how can I just be a little bit better? And that lends itself to one of the secrets that Shawn taught me. And I'm so thankful for Shawn and his message in his TED Talk and in his book, the reason why I bought the book. Because Shawn taught me one thing. He gave me a definition in an interview he did at Google. And I'd never heard of this definition before, but it's become sort of my mantra for finding success in my life. When I went to do my first Ironman triathlon, I went there looking for happiness. I thought, boy, when I finish this one thing, I'll be happy. And the thing about setting goals like that is that we never sort of allow our brains to get to happiness. Sure, we allow our brains to perceive pleasure. So when I crossed the Ironman finish line, I felt pleasure for about 15 seconds. And then I immediately turned around, looked at the time and went, how can I be better? I didn't allow myself to actually be happy as an Ironman. I said, that was good. How can I be better? And I immediately changed in my mind where the goalpost was for happiness. So even though I had that immediate pleasure, that momentary pleasure, I never truly felt happy because I felt I could do better. And we experience that across business. I mean, think about it. You set a sales goal for yourself, you hit that target, and all of a sudden they change the target. You have to sell more. So we never really give ourselves the opportunity to actually be happy in the moment. So Shawn's definition that he shared with me actually came from an old Greek philosopher. And the idea is he wants people to stop thinking about happiness as success and rather happiness as the joy you feel while striving for your full potential every day. And if you allow yourself to be in the moment, be present, and actually appreciate what's happening to you and appreciate that this is a journey, and you may never get to the finish line. So if you're waiting to get to the finish line, you might never ever be happy. But if you recognize that work and life is a journey and that every day should be celebrated, that's how you put yourself into the mindset of experiencing joy every day, just simply doing your best. So I love that definition that Shawn shares. That definition is not in this book. It is in his online talk at Google, and I'll put that down in the comment links as well below. Now, tip number 5, Shawn wants us to think about managing small goals, not big goals. And I often tell people, when you go off to say, I'm going to go do an Ironman, that's such a monumental, huge task to do, to try to overcome, to try to tackle. And if you really thought about it, it could be overwhelming. It's like climbing a mountain. You want to get to the top, but to get up there, the mountain is very, very big and it can seem overwhelming. But if you break it down into the daily steps, there's a recipe to get from point A to point B. And if you just break it down into those daily steps and you celebrate those daily steps every day, over time, good things happen. Over time, you eventually reach your goal. But you're not just happy because you reached your goal. You've been happy all throughout that process, and the people around you have been happier because that positive energy spins off. So I really love the idea of breaking those big goals down into small, daily, bite-sized pieces. Now, turning bad habits into good habits. This is success, or the best ideas we're sharing, number 6. And, here I think what we're trying to talk about is common sense. They say that common sense is common, but it's not very, very much so at all. When you think about it, we all know we should eat better, we should exercise more, we should stop smoking. That's common sense. But if it's common sense, why do so few people exercise, eat nutritionally dense foods, and why do so many people still smoke? Like, it boggles the mind. But the idea is that we need to find ways of turning bad habits into good habits. And Shawn goes on to talk about the neuroscience of paths of least resistance. And unfortunately, our brains are hardwired to always take the path of least resistance. So if it's easier to buy processed food than to actually make good, dense, whole, nutritionally dense foods, you're likely going to take the path of least resistance just because it's easier. If you've been a smoker, it's a lot easier to stay a smoker because of the nicotine addiction than it is to actually quit. Willpower alone is not a great motivator. Willpower is not the path of least resistance for most people. That's why so many people try to diet and fail. They try to exercise and fail. You've got to find other things to create a path of least resistance. So in my mind, when I started running again, I knew it was going to be hard. I knew I was not going to enjoy it in the beginning. So what I did to make it easy for myself was I sort of created an opportunity where I would set myself up for success and not failure. So every night I would lay out right beside my bed, because I would run in the morning, I would lay out my running shoes, my socks, my running shorts, and my t-shirt. Everything that I needed was there. And I had this t-shirt made up and it said, "Today I win. I will finish what I started. I will reach my goal." And every morning when I woke up to my alarm, I would roll over and I would look and I would read my t-shirt. And that was, in my mind, creating a path of least resistance. It told my mind what I needed to do. And I think if you look at Mel Robbins and some of her talks in her book, The 5-Second Rule, if you look at her principle, it's about causing yourself to take action before you allow your brain really to stop and think about what it is you're actually doing. So in my mind, I sort of created the path of least resistance. I put everything out, and I just had to get up. I just had to get up and put my feet on the floor. And as soon as I did that, I knew there was sort of no turning back, no going back to bed. So I would get up, put on my running clothes, and I would go off and do my run. But it's about creating a path of least resistance for yourself and setting yourself up for success. If you can sort of create those paths of least resistance, you'll start to find that works much more effectively and efficiently than willpower alone. So the seventh item that Shawn wants us to think about or consider is social support being your greatest asset for happiness. And the analogy that he gives is a football team. He says the quarterback and the running back, they're the most celebrated celebrities on the team. But every successful quarterback and running back will tell you that they are no one without their offensive line creating either pockets of opportunities for them to go farther or pockets of opportunities to keep them safe. It's that community that you need to have around you that's going to help propel you into greatness. So in Shawn's talk, which is outside of this book, which I will share in the link below, in his TED Talk, Shawn gives 5 tips. And these are 5 tips that I truly believe in. I think they will help create a mindset and a framework for how you can just take 5 minutes every day to set yourself up for happiness. And those 5 things that Shawn wants us to do is he wants us to think about 3 things that we're grateful for every day and then write them down in a journal. When you journal things, so think of 3 things that are grateful. Train your mind to look for 3 things that you're grateful for. It could be your work, it could be your family, it could be the fact that you live in a wonderful country, it could be the fact that even though it's raining out today, the air is fresh and there's a heck of a lot worse places in the world you could be. So try to find 3 things that you're grateful for today and think about them. Step number 2, write them down in a journal. Because what happens is when you think about it and you cause your mind to think about these things, you relive those experiences and you get all the positive chemical reactions going on inside your brain, the neuroscience of happiness happening over and over again. You're repeating that process. You're creating more positive brain waves happening inside your mind, which is good. Exercise, daily exercise. If you haven't guessed that by now, I'm a huge proponent of daily exercise, have been for the last 12 years. And it is absolutely a part of my life. You get such great positive chemicals released into your brain as you're exercising. And I've gone on that topic for so many times, I'm not going to rant about that today, but 2 thumbs up for Shawn for mentioning exercise is a great way to help relieve stress and to release those happiness chemicals in our brains. Meditation. I used to think meditation was kind of one of those funny things that monks did or really weird yoga people did. And no offense to the yoga people, but it was just one of these preconceived notions that ignorant people like me sometimes have. And what I learned from Shawn and what I learned from the app Headspace and what I learned from guys like Rich Roll, it's all about just trying to focus on one thing. If you can learn how to focus just on your breathing, we live in a world with so many physical distractions. We are so hyper-wired. We're so overwhelmed by all the things going on around us. The idea of meditation is training your brain to slow down and think about one thing. And when you can think about just one thing, you become really clear in your thought process. You become relaxed. You become happier. It's just this self-introspective way of just helping yourself feel better every day, just slowing things down a little bit. The final thing that Shawn talks about is random acts of kindness. And the funny thing about a random act of kindness is that you don't even have to be the instigator of a random act of kindness to get the benefits from it. It turns out that if you watch somebody do something nice for somebody else, like hold the door open for them, you feel good too. If you see somebody randomly just reaching over and picking up some papers that somebody dropped and handing them to them, you feel good knowing that there's good people in the world. It's this amazing thing that we're all interconnected by neuroscience, by chemicals, when we see good things happening. So random acts of kindness. I know I just open doors for people. Doesn't matter whether it's a guy or a girl. I just open doors for people. That's one of the things that I was sort of my father taught me to do, and I continue to do, and I've taught my son to do. And sometimes you feel like a bit of a doorman, but hey, at the end of the day, you do something, a little bit of niceness for somebody else goes a long way, because you know that they're going to feel better just because they watched you do something nice. So it's about making your world a better place. So just doing those 5 daily activities. The other thing that Shawn talks about as well that I didn't make a note of here, but sending 2 emails off to your social network, just telling them something that you're happy about or thankful for, that was really positive. I found that the exercise of just even trying to reach out to 1 or 2 people a day and just saying something nice to them, doing it in a way that you're not expecting anything in return. You're just trying to be nice and improve your social network. These are the little daily habits that if you just employ these things, the spin-off of positivity is completely just overwhelming. And it really helps you to step back and see your world differently. There's an experiment that Shawn talks about in his book called the Tetris effect. And it's kind of funny that they did this experiment, and people who played the game Tetris over and over and over again started to see their world in blocks, and they would walk down the street and they would start to see buildings and think, how can I fit this building into that building? Or they'd go to the grocery store and how can I fit this cereal box beside that cereal box? It's just the pattern that they train their brain to think about. And often when we think about happiness at work, if we don't like our jobs, and we know that from a recent Gallup poll that 85% of North American adults actually secretly hate their jobs, there's a reason for that, and I don't think it's the reasons that we all think about. I think we just get stuck in these patterns where we anticipate things to be bad and wrong, that we go looking for it, as opposed to trying to find things to be grateful for, things to be happy about, or small little pieces of gratitude, things that you can do for other people to make their day, as opposed to relishing in those moments. If you're constantly walking around saying, oh, it's Monday, it's going to be horrible, Mondays are always horrible, you're going to go to work looking for that horrible thing to happen, and it's going to happen because we've become what we believe we achieve. And if we believe it's going to be horrible, we achieve horrible things. If we believe it's going to be great, we achieve great things. It's a mindset. So to wrap up this book report, I would give the Happiness Advantage combined with Shawn's TED Talk and his talks at Google 5 thumbs up, 5 Heartfit Hearts. This is a real good book, along with the videos that I'll share with you in the links below, which are free. I love where Shawn's going with this. We all have the power within us to seek out happiness in our lives. It's not hard. It's in front of us. I'll always remember, happiness is the joy you feel while striving for your full potential every day. And if you remember that simple mantra alone, it'll change the way you think about your life, and it'll change your level and ability to be happy. So if you like this book and you like these book reviews, please check out the other ones you'll find on my YouTube channel. Please feel free to share, like, comment. I love to keep the conversation going. I'd love to hear from other folks who have read this book and any thoughts and comments they may have. You can buy this book, obviously, through the links below as well. So thank you for watching. Thank you for connecting with us here on YouTube, and I look forward to sharing more great book reviews with you in the future. Bye for now.